They called her the crazy cat lady. They called her a parasite. But Elena did not care about the cruel words of the wealthy residents in the Golden Crest luxury apartments. She only cared about the helpless. Elena was 24, an orphan, and a genius coder who worked from her lonely apartment. Her only friends were the stray cats she rescued from the cold, dark streets. The neighbors hated her for it. They wore expensive clothes and drove shiny cars. To them, Elena, in her oversized hoodies and bags of cheap cat food, was a stain on their perfect building.
"Get your filthy animals out of our lobby," Mrs. Gable, the ruthless head of the building association, hissed one afternoon, slamming a door in Elena's face. Elena just held a shivering, injured kitten closer to her chest. She was used to the cruelty. She could handle it. But she did not know that her quiet life was about to shatter tonight. It was midnight. A terrible storm screamed outside, slamming rain against the glass. Elena's favorite rescue, a brave black cat named Midnight, suddenly dashed out of her apartment door and ran down into the freezing concrete parking garage. "Midnight, come back," Elena whispered, her heart pounding with a strange, dark feeling. She ran into the dim shadows of the massive garage. The air felt cold and heavy. Suddenly, Midnight stopped near a dark corner, letting out a sharp, frightened hiss. Elena stopped tracking her cat. Her breath caught in her throat. There was a man collapsed against a concrete pillar. He wore a tailored black suit, now soaked in deep, crimson blood. A massive shadow of a man, gasping for air, clutching a bullet wound in his side. It was Giovanni. He was the city's most feared modern mafia boss, a man who ruled the criminal underworld with an iron fist. Tonight, his rivals had ambushed him. He had crawled into this garage, bleeding out, waiting for death. Elena's instincts screamed at her to run. If she stayed, the killers might find her too. But she looked at his pale face, his fading eyes, and she couldn't leave him to die. "Help me," Giovanni choked out, his vision blurring as he looked up at the girl in the wet hoodie. Elena knelt in the blood. "Stay quiet," she whispered firmly. Suddenly, the heavy metal doors of the garage creaked open. Heavy footsteps echoed in the distance. The killers were inside the building. They were coming to finish the job. The killers are just seconds away around the corner, and Elena has a choice that will alter her life forever. If you want to see how a quiet cat lady faces the most dangerous men in the city, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss the explosive revenge in the next chapters. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The heavy footsteps of the hitmen grew louder, echoing off the concrete walls of the garage. Flashlights cut through the darkness, beaming past the expensive cars. They were looking for Giovanni. They were looking to finish the job. Giovanni tried to stand, his hand gripping a heavy silver pistol, but his knees buckled. He was too weak. He collapsed back against the pillar, his eyes closing. Elena didn't waste a second. She grabbed Giovanni's massive arm and pulled him behind a stack of thick winter tires stored in the corner. It was a tight, dark hiding spot. She squeezed in next to him, pressing her back against his chest. She held her hand tightly over his mouth to muffle his heavy, ragged breathing. Midnight, the black cat, sat perfectly still at their feet, staring into the dark. Two men in long gray coats walked past their hiding spot. The beams of their flashlights danced just inches away from Elena's shoes. The men hurried toward the elevators. The heavy metal doors clicked open and shut. They were gone, but only for a moment. They would be back. Elena knew she had to act fast. She pulled out her laptop from her backpack. Her fingers flew across the keyboard like lightning. As a genius software engineer, the building's security system was like a toy to her. Within 30 seconds, she hacked into the Golden Crest main server. She found the live security footage of the parking garage. With a few quick taps, she deleted the last 10 minutes of film showing Giovanni crawling into the garage. Then she looped the camera feed, making the screens in the security room show an empty, peaceful garage. To anyone watching the monitors, nothing had happened.
"Come on," Elena whispered, helping Giovanni stand. He was massive, but he forced himself to walk, amazed by the quiet strength of the girl everyone ignored. Using the service stairs, she secretly guided him up to her small apartment. She locked the door with 3 separate deadbolts. The hitmen were searching the building, but thanks to Elena's digital shield, they had no idea which room to target. Giovanni was safe inside the home of the crazy cat lady. Elena just wiped the digital footprints of the city's most dangerous man, but the danger inside her apartment is just beginning. Will Giovanni survive the night? Drop a like on this video right now to show your support for Elena's bravery, and let's move to the next chapter. For 3 days, Elena kept Giovanni hidden. She patched his wounds with her small medical kit and fed him warm soup. Giovanni, the terrifying Mafia boss, spent his days sitting on her small sofa, covered in purring cats. He watched Elena work on her computer, fascinated by her kind heart and sharp mind. No one had ever cared for him, just as a human being before. But outside her door, a storm of hatred was brewing. On the 4th morning, a loud, violent pounding rattled Elena's apartment door. Elena opened it. Mrs. Gable stood there, flanked by 2 large security guards and a crowd of wealthy neighbors. They all had smirks on their faces. Behind them, Elena's beloved rescue cats were already trapped in cruel plastic crates, crying out in terror. "What are you doing? Let them go!" Elena cried, her voice breaking as she rushed forward. Mrs. Gable slammed a heavy paper against Elena's chest. "You are evicted, you absolute rodent. Your rent check bounced by $10, and we are throwing you and your filthy animals into the street right now." "Please," Elena begged, tears streaming down her pale face. "The bank made a mistake. I can pay it right now. Don't hurt my cats. They have nowhere to go." The neighbors laughed, pointing at her oversized, faded hoodie. "Look at her crying," one neighbor sneered. "Go back to the gutter where you belong, crazy cat lady." The guards roughly grabbed Elena's arms, dragging her toward the elevator. Mrs. Gable picked up Elena's laptop, her only source of income, and threw it onto the hard concrete floor, smashing it into pieces. Elena let out a sharp, choked sob. She felt completely helpless, crushed under the weight of their cruelty. From the shadows of the dark hallway, a pair of cold, pitch-black eyes watched everything. Giovanni stood there, his wounds mostly healed, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. His blood boiled with a lethal rage. He wanted to tear these people apart with his bare hands, but he knew a public alley fight would endanger Elena. He needed a grander, more absolute destruction for them. He quietly slipped down the back stairs and pulled out a sleek, encrypted phone. "Bring the fleet," Giovanni commanded, his voice shaking the air like thunder. "Every single man, now!" Down in the lobby, the neighbors threw Elena's few cardboard boxes into the pouring rain. Elena sat on the wet pavement, holding her crying cats close, shivering and broken. Mrs. Gable stood under the building awning, laughing loudly. "This is a place for royalty, not trash like you!" Mrs. Gable yelled over the rain. Elena pulled her knees to her chest, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. She had saved a life, but she couldn't even save her own home. The neighbors think they have won, but they have no idea they just signed their own doom. The ultimate retribution is arriving. If you want to see the exact moment these arrogant bullies get what they deserve, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, and drop a comment saying revenge down below. The rain poured down like a heavy sheet of ice, soaking Elena's hair as she sat on the cold concrete sidewalk.
Mrs. Gable and the neighbors stood under the dry awning of the building, drinking expensive coffee and laughing at her misery. Elena hugged her shivering cats tighter, her tears mixing with the rain. Suddenly, a deep, rumbling sound vibrated through the ground. It wasn't thunder. From around the corner of the street, a massive, shiny black SUV pulled up to the curb. Then another. And another. Within seconds, a line of 10 identical bulletproof black SUVs completely blocked the street, their headlights blinding the crowd. The sheer power of the vehicles made the neighbors stop laughing. The air became dead silent. The doors of the SUVs flew open at the exact same time. Dozens of tall, muscular men in sharp, identical black suits stepped out into the rain. They did not care about the weather. They moved like a perfectly trained army, instantly forming 2 straight lines from the lead SUV all the way to where Elena sat in the puddle. Mrs. Gable's coffee cup shook in her hand. What is the meaning of this? Move these cars, she yelled, though her voice trembled. None of the men looked at her. Instead, the back door of the middle SUV opened. A large man stepped out, holding a massive black umbrella. He walked quickly up the stairs of the building, bypassed the crowd entirely, and walked right into the dark hallway. A moment later, Giovanni stepped out of the shadows of the building lobby. He was no longer the bleeding, weak man Elena had saved. He wore a crisp, tailored 3-piece suit that cost more than Mrs. Gable's entire apartment. His hair was perfectly styled, and his posture was commanding, radiating pure, terrifying power. The dozens of men in suits instantly bowed their heads in unison. "Good morning, boss," they chanted, their voices echoing off the walls. Elena gasped, staring up through her wet hair. The neighbors froze, their faces turning completely pale. They finally realized who the crazy cat lady had been keeping inside her apartment. They were standing in front of the most dangerous man in the city. Giovanni didn't look at the crowd. He walked straight down the steps, ignoring the dry awning, and knelt right in the dirty puddle in front of Elena. He took off his expensive suit jacket and gently wrapped it around her shivering shoulders. Mr. Gable's jaw dropped so low, it looked like it might unhinge. She stepped forward, her expensive high heels splashing in the shallow water under the awning. Mr. Giovanni? She stammered, her face losing every ounce of color. There must be a mistake. This woman is a menace. She brings street filth into our luxury establishment. We were just protecting the property value. Giovanni stood up slowly from the puddle. The gentle warmth in his eyes vanished instantly as he turned to face the crowd. His face became a mask of pure, freezing stone. "Your establishment?" Giovanni asked, his voice low, yet it carried over the sound of the pouring rain. He walked up the stairs, his expensive shoes clicking rhythmically. The neighbors shrunk back, trying to hide behind one another. Giovanni signaled to his top lieutenant, who immediately stepped forward and handed him a leather folder containing official city documents. 3 days ago, Giovanni said, flipping open the folder, an anonymous buyer purchased 90% of the shares of the Golden Crest luxury apartments. The entire building, the land it sits on, and the security company you hire belong to that buyer. Mrs. Gable blinked, completely confused. Who bought it? Giovanni looked directly into her eyes. I did, and I bought it for Elena. The crowd let out a collective, horrified gasp. The neighbors, who had just been mocking Elena's faded hoodie, now looked like they wanted to faint. The woman they had pushed into the mud was now legally their landlord. As the sole owner of this property, Giovanni continued, his voice cutting like a knife, my very first order is to dissolve the housing board. Mrs. Gable, you are fired. And because you deliberately destroyed Elena's laptop, which holds private data,
My legal team is freezing your bank accounts for property damage and harassment investigations by noon today." Mrs. Gable fell to her knees right on the concrete, clutching her chest, realizing her entire comfortable lifestyle had just vanished in 30 seconds. Giovanni turned back to Elena, extending a large, scarred hand. "Come, Elena, let us go inside. Your new home is waiting." The bullies are officially losing everything, but Giovanni's justice is just getting started. He has a massive surprise for Elena's future. If you think Mrs. Gable got exactly what she deserved, drop a comment saying justice below, and let's unlock the next chapter. Elena took Giovanni's hand, using his strength to stand up from the wet sidewalk. As she walked back into the warm, golden lobby of the building, the remaining neighbors scrambled out of her way like frightened mice. The very people who had sneered at her just minutes ago were now bowing their heads, trembling with fear. "Elena, please!" One neighbor, a wealthy businessman who had called her trash, begged with a sweaty face. "We didn't know! We were just following Mrs. Gable's orders! Please don't evict us!" Giovanni didn't even look at them. He snapped his fingers, and his men immediately began carrying Elena's wet boxes back inside. More importantly, they carefully brought in the crates holding her rescued cats, releasing them into the warm, dry lobby. "From now on," Giovanni announced to the terrified crowd, "this building has new rules. Anyone who looks at Elena with disrespect will find their lease canceled by sunset. And anyone who harms a single animal in this neighborhood will answer to me personally." He then led Elena to the elevator, bypassing her old, cramped floor entirely. They rode all the way to the top, the penthouse suite. When the doors opened, Elena gasped. The penthouse was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing a beautiful view of the entire city. But it wasn't just a luxury apartment. Giovanni had completely transformed it over the last 24 hours. One entire wing of the penthouse was filled with beautiful, custom-built climbing trees, soft velvet beds, and state-of-the-art medical stations for injured animals. On a large mahogany desk sat the newest, most powerful developer laptop available, glinting in the light. "You saved me again," Giovanni whispered into her hair, his voice trembling with an emotion he had never felt before. "They think I am the monster of this city, but you are the most dangerous thing alive." Elena wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling the steady, powerful beat of his heart. The crazy cat lady and the Mafia boss. They were from two completely different worlds, but tonight they had built a fortress that no one in the world could ever break. From the mud of the streets to the throne of the city, Elena and Giovanni proved that loyalty and kindness always win. If you loved this journey and want to see more high-stakes storytelling masterpieces just like this, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your favorite part of the story in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.